Well, I guess it's Thursday, so it's time to make another one of these goddamn things. You're listening to Erik Harrison, a podcast where if at any time you hit pause or rewind, you'll have spent more time listening to it than I did making it. Yeah, I thought somehow this one would be different and I'd be prepared and it would be good, but instead, no, just this relentless march to overcommit to a joke and make myself miserable. But before we get to all that, the theme song performed by the Erik Harrison Band. Today it is, I Can't Decide by the Scissor Sisters. I can't decide whether you should live or die. Oh, you'll probably go to heaven. Please don't hang your head and cry. No wonder why my heart feels dead inside. It's cold and hard and petrified. Lock the doors and close the blinds. We're going for a ride. Was the last episode of this show better than previous episodes? No, but it did suck up to my audience a whole lot more. And the response you guys gave me was great. I had hoped that after sort of purging emotions from me, Vulcan-like, that I would be able to move on to this episode full of comedy. And instead, I'm mostly just full of cramp from having been on the train home from work. But as usual, we carry on, and so we begin with old business. Old business, as usual, is the matter of the shirts. The first of the shirts are going out. If you haven't gotten one, I guess you're not the kind of person who hangs out at my house all the time, because that's who got a shirt first, namely myself. I signed a shirt for myself because I figured, you know what, the first piece of merch should go to me. But more interesting than that is there's actually two inaugural Erik Harrison of Podcast shirts. Mine that I made for myself and for you, my audience, and my first piece of fan art. I'll put a picture somewhere where this podcast is. If you be where this podcast be, you be where picture be. And that picture is of me wearing the Erik Harrison of Podcast fan shirt sent to me by a fan. I will leave that fan. Should I say nameless? Do you want to be nameless? No, that's probably not cool. You want to. I want to be someone who has thousands of listeners, millions even, truly a world of listeners, and you'd get a thrill from a shout out. So, in the spirit of pretending that we're more important than we are, I will say, Kelly S., thank you for the Erik Harrison of Podcast shirt. It's amazing, if for no other reason than it has my name on it, and I didn't put it there. So, if you want to know how well the podcast is going, that's where we're at. We're expanding. We're doing great. Shut up, Dad. I'm accomplished. We're going to do a live show pretty soon. Yeah, you heard me right. A live show by walking into a place where there are people and recording as normal, interviewing whoever walks by. We're going to be in a coffee shop, is what I'm saying. I'm going to go to a coffee shop, and not a cool one because you don't want to do that to people, but maybe a Starbucks, and just record the show at full volume in front of everyone who works in the podcast is trying to accomplish something, as if this is a totally normal thing to do, like someone who eats on the metro. Yeah, I think that's the plan. So live show, look for that to come in the future. Health update, as per usual, the last bit of remaining old business. Asterisk, put a note in that, come back to it. If you hear any noises during the podcast, sort of rustling sound, which some of you have mentioned, it's because I fidget a lot and I'm literally just sitting in bed and I'm wearing a jacket because I'm cold, and you're just hearing the comforter and the jacket move around. I'm hyper aware of that stuff now. So at work sometimes I'll move and think, oh God, that's noise in the podcast. No, it isn't, because you're not recording a podcast at work, you moron. That's how far this insanity has poisoned my brain. Back to the asterisk. You were coming back from the footnote to the main text. Health update. I'm better. That's great. I am taking care of myself a little bit better. I recently had the first massage of my life. I don't want people messing with my shit. I use my shit for me stuff. I don't want someone else getting in there and messing with it. So the idea of a massage was a little off-putting from the beginning, which is why I never received one before. But the other thing is, I think relaxation is a moral evil, and I don't want anything to do with it. So I was very resistant. But then you look really, really churlish if you turn one down when someone is giving one to you as a birthday or Christmas gift. And extra churlish if you're actively unwell and someone's like, hey, you should, engage in some self-care. Although I walked in and the masseuse said, yeah, we can't do shit for vertigo. I mean, he didn't say that, but he said that. So it was an experience. I want to tell you about it because you have to listen to me. You clicked play. All right, that's the thing that I want you to be aware of this whole time this is going on, is that whatever experience you're having right now, you are culpable because you're listening. Obviously, if I do something truly awful, that's on me, but if it's just boring or irritating, or if you're screaming to your phone while driving through traffic, why am I listening to this? I honestly have no idea. Send me your reasons. Let me know. Tweet me at Erik Harrison and let me know why the fuck you listen to this podcast. So anyway, massage. I hobbled myself down to the masseuse, still experiencing some vertigo at the time. Never been to a masseuse before, very confused. They were super nice to me, and I did not know how to handle that. It was like tinkling music, and everything kind of smelled like there had been incense there once, but not like there was incense there now, because it'd be bothersome. But it felt like a place spiritually where incense was, without any of the obnoxious qualities of actually burning a thing. And they gave me a beverage and they asked me to fill out some forms. No one spoke any louder or any more harsh than this. Everything was like this. You're welcome, Mr. Harrison. Please sit over there while we align a person in here who's out of alignment. We'll align them and we'll come to you and we'll align you. It's like having your tires fixed is the language they use. Like, you're going to realign your tires. We're going to realign all your limbs. But the tone of voice, they say, is exactly the same that your guru would use, like, right after the trip is over. Like, you may be settling back into your body right now. Exactly the same language. I managed to handle it pretty well until, we got into the room and the guy asked me, sort of, what are you going through? I explained my condition. He's like, well, we can't do anything for vertigo, but we can do something for some of maybe your back pain and your other stress from being hunched over a computer. And he says, well, undress to your level of comfort and I'll come back. So I did that. My level of comfort, it should be noted, is pretty high. So I removed, let's say, all of my clothes. And if you've had a massage, then you know what you're supposed to do in that moment. And if you've not had a massage, you're the kind of person for whom that is a little bit uncomfortable, then what you probably do is, you control yourself. You don't undress a lot. If you're me, if you're in this center of the Venn diagram between I would never voluntarily do any kind of self-care, but especially a massage, and also not super self-conscious because of performing things, then what you'll do is you'll get totally naked, and then the guy will ask, hey, should I come in? And you'll say, yeah. And he comes in, and you're just standing there in nothing but your socks. And he goes, no, you're supposed to get under the sheet. Apparently there's a sheet, but no one told me that. So we got off to kind of a rough start. And our conversation afterwards, which was mostly about jazz and Coltrane specifically, was a little stilted because, I was naked under there, and I knew that and he knew that, but I also made sure he couldn't forget it, which maybe the point of the sheet is. Anyway, that's that story. I hope you were amused. God, Eric, get your shit together. We gotta do a little better than this. Okay, let's go to the sponsor break. As you know, the sponsors on Erik Harrison, a podcast, are literally anyone who sends me money. If you send me money, I will say stuff on the podcast. Ideally, I get a lot of money from some big corporation that can get rid of it, and I, quote, advertise their products, end quote. As you know, I have boycotted making a website until Squarespace or Wix sponsors me. I've considered boycotting eating until Blue Apron or someone similar starts sending me food. But it turns out that you can't really keep up the weekly podcast rate without eating. And also, I like eating. I considered lying about whether or not I was avoiding eating. And I probably should have done that. I think that would have been funnier. But instead, we do have a sponsor for today's episode, and it's none of those companies. It's just some person who I think will remain nameless, perhaps. Let's call them Shara Merman. Shara Merman, that's an anonymous, made-up name, brought in... Well, the real sponsor of today's episode is Carol. Carol, this podcast is brought to you by Carol. Fuck you, Carol. Fuck you, Carol. Carol, you're not a good Carol. Carol, you're a bad Carol. You're a bad person. You're a bad Carol. And you know what you did. And all these people listening are like, what did Carol do? Why is he saying bad things about Carol? This is a mystery we'll never solve. No, I'll just fucking tell you. Carol owns a building, and she's awful about it. Landlords are bad, awful people who profit off of the need for other people to have places to fucking live. If you're my landlord, by the way, and you're listening to this show, this isn't about you and don't kick me out. But if you're Carol, then come at me, bro, because Carol is a passive-aggressive bint who did bad things. Let's be specific about Carol's awfulness. Carol. I just keep saying Carol. I have a fan named Carol, by the way. I'm really sorry for what this experience is being like. We're not talking about you, Carol. We're talking about Carol. And you're a great person, but Carol is absolutely not. Carol decided to care for a fungal infestation. That ding you heard is someone texting me because, again, I just use shitty equipment, just my computer. Yes, I know, I got the squash. You're okay. Hold on. Let's just. Can we put the computer in the airplaniest of modes? Let's do that. Why would I set up a situation where I could be interrupted in my Carol rant any time by a text message coming in? Why don't I do this podcast? Everything about this is a bad idea. I'm not good at it. You don't want to listen. And you know why I do it? I do it because Carol. Because there needs to be a place where anyone can send in a large sum of money, preferably, and have a trusted voice in modern media say whatever the hell they want to say. It's really democratizing our access to media. Carol decided to deal with a fungal infestation in one of her properties by dousing the building in bleach until it was unlivable. Not just unlivable in the place where there was a problem, but unlivable in other units in the building. And when the residents of said building were sleeping in parkas so that all the windows could be kept open in winter in order to protect themselves from the stank of said bleach, which was causing headaches and problems. After multiple attempts to contact Carol, Carol sent back the following email. Dear residents, have you considered opening a window or propping open the door? THX, Carol. And that sound, Carol, that you're hearing is simultaneously every human being who just heard your email going, fuck you, Carol, in solid unison. And not just with their mouth, with their hearts and their souls. That's how deep the fuck you, Carol, goes. So fuck you, Carol. You're a blight upon this world. Everything you do to make money, to live off of, to consume, is predatory. The world is a worse place for your existence. Those are things that I thought, by the way. That's not the person who sent me money. I just kind of went off on a tangent there. So if that person, nameless person, is listening, then maybe they're feeling strongly associated with negative words that they don't really want to equate themselves with. So if your name is Carol and you're a landlord, assume it's some other Carol. It's not. It's fucking you. But assume that it is some other Carol for the sake of my listeners and their ability to stay in their homes. And that brings us, now that the sponsor break is over, to our recurring segment, Other People's Podcasts, where I talk about other podcasts as a way of faking my way through some content. And today, we're going to talk about a podcast that you may not have heard of, and by may not, I guarantee you've never heard of, because it's only ever been listened to by one person. And what that means will become abundantly clear here in a moment. We're going to actually play little chunks of the episode of this podcast and sort of talk about it. I think there's some interesting material here. Let's hear the beginning.
Good evening. This is Andy Day, a podcast hosted by Andy Day. Actually, you know what? That's derivative. Let's switch it up. Let's call this An Evening with Andy Day, a podcast. Oh yes, that's much better.
Is it?
And
is it, Andy?
You know, this is
going to put you on pause there. Is it better? I'm not sure that it is. This is. He's calling it a podcast. My friend Andy recorded 22 minutes of him babbling into his phone, which admittedly is not that different than what I did, except that he sent it just to me. It's not cast. It's barely pod. It is at best a parody of the experience that you were currently having. Let's hear Andy describe. I'm just scrubbing through timestamps. This is a very, very poor, weak editing system. Let's hear Andy describe his goals with his begin quote podcast end quote.
My aim for this transmission is to be heard by a very small audience, an audience of one. One man, one heart, 2 ears. And that will be the ears of Erik Harrison, host of Erik Harrison, a podcast.
So he gets my name wrong. I'm not Erik Harrison. I am Erik Harrison. I guess he gets the title of the podcast right though. So, way to go, Andy. And to be clear, I haven't edited this in any way. I'm just literally jumping through my own recording of this other piece of fan art. One piece of fan art was the T-shirt. The second piece of fan art was this creepy assault on my identity. And I'm just playing it on the same computer I'm recording this on. So if it's not audible, again, I ask you, why do you listen to this piece of shit? Let's scrub ahead 5 minutes of Andy just sort of trying to figure out how to make sounds with his mouth until we get to the point where he says why his podcast will be better than mine.
I am about 3% better looking than Erik Harrison.
He's not wrong.
Andy, why do you think looks would matter in doing a podcast? Well, let me tell you. It's what the looks do to the confidence in your delivery and your voice and your intonation.
This prick sounds like Barry White, and I hate him for it. But still, he goes on for 5 minutes describing the podcast that he's making right now, which is hilarious, which makes me feel better actually about the garbage that I do. I could scrub to at any point in this document, and you'll hear dead air, and then this mellifluous voice describing the thing that he's currently doing or whatever thought is coming into his head. For example,
because I'm about 3% more confident.
Or
security guard who oversaw and enacted these heinous war crimes.
Yeah, just talking about whatever is in his head. Here's him saying possibly the greatest sentence ever uttered by a human being right about now.
States.
Oh, hold on. Let's find it for you. There we go.
Basically the R. Kelly of yoga.
Incredible. Just here's him just reviewing Pacino's performance in The Irishman. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah. Again, he's just talking about whatever's in his head at this moment. And that means that he's got 35 years or so of preparation for this first podcast, and this is what he comes up with.
And I mean, you go down all these movies he's made, and he is just a shrieking banshee of a man. There is no subtlety, There is no dynamics. He still has this great voice, but it's just like if someone had the loudest and prettiest and best French horn and he was just blaring a high E as loud as he could through the entire symphony, and that was the piece of music that he created.
I mean, he's not wrong about Pacino, but again, he's just talking whatever's in front of him. And when he runs out of stuff, he turns on the TV. And what does he get? A Luther Vandross music video, which he spends literally 4.5 minutes describing in great detail.
You hear that? That's Luther.
Yeah, we know it's Luther. We've heard the song before. And here he is just, again, describing the video as he sees it. One moment.
This is the Never Too Much video.
Yeah, we know.
And I'm just going to tell you what's happening.
Yeah, we know.
Luther's in a sound studio.
Great for Luther. This, when I say this continues the whole time, I'm not exaggerating.
Here on the street. Well, here's Luther singing. Don't touch me. Yep. Yes.
Great. That's great. Continue to describe this video for me, Andy.
Great eye contact with the camera. Voice like silk. And it cuts to just random women walking around New York City. Some have jobs, some don't.
I like how he thinks because he's 3% hotter, he can make describing a Luther Vandross music video that I've already seen hilarious. And he pretty much succeeds. It just continues to commit to the bit the whole time. I could scrub here and you'd get gems the whole time. Like, no matter where I drop it, it's gonna be funny.
Not even rollerblades, roller skates. And this dude's got a beatbox. And this woman's tapping her hand. Oh, that's a man. I'm sorry.
Just continual gems. And this goes on forever.
We've come a long way. And this is only the beginning. Oh, Luther, I love your sense of poetry. This is from you.
Here's genius.
Never enough. There's more women with headphones. I imagine they're listening to Luther.
See, now he gets it.
Got it now. We figured out the video. He's in the studio singing his yarns. And these women with headphones are listening to them. He can see them, but they can only hear him. What a metaphor for art.
So this continues for 22 minutes. This is what the man does. 22 minutes. And he has the gall to end with this.
And we got the mission statement and the exposition out of the way, so I think hopefully next time there'll be a lot more room for content.
More room for content? How could there be more content, Andy? This is chock full, wall to wall. This is the apotheosis in India of the form. No podcast could be greater.
There'll be no friends or enemies of the show. There will not be a living girlfriend. Because I am making a podcast designed only for Erik Harrison, host of Erik Harrison, a podcast. And this has been An Evening with Andy Day, a podcast by Andy Day for Erik Harrison, host of Erik Harrison, a podcast.
And this has been Erik Harrison, a podcast, extracting 10 minutes of material from An Evening with Andy Day, a podcast for the host of Erik Harrison, a podcast, Erik Harrison, hosted by Erik Harrison. And now we bring you back to our closing number, Oh, I could throw you in the lake, feed you poison birthday cake. I won't deny I'm gonna miss you when you're gone.